Every screen on Earth went dark at the same moment. Television broadcasts, phone displays, computer monitors, and even the holographic billboards in Tokyo and New York. All of them showed nothing but black for exactly 3 seconds. Then the face appeared. High Arbiter Cross was not human. His skin looked like polished volcanic rock. 6 eyes glowed pale blue across his elongated skull. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Species designation: human. You have been assessed. You have been measured. The Dominion hegemony now claims your worlds, your resources, and your population. You will dismantle all military vessels within 72 hours. You will surrender all colonies beyond your birth planet. You will submit to genetic cataloging for integration into our labor systems. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. The screens returned to normal. But nothing would ever be normal again. In Geneva, the United Earth Council gathered within the hour. Representatives from every nation sat in stunned silence as Admiral Yuki Tanaka presented the intelligence reports. The Dominion hegemony had conquered over 400 worlds across 10,000 years. They had destroyed entire civilizations. The Vareshi Confederation had refused their terms 2 centuries ago. 80 billion Vareshi had died. Their homeworld was now an asteroid field. "We cannot fight this," said the European representative. His voice shook. "We have 12 colony worlds. They have 400. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. There's numbers in the hundreds of thousands. The mathematics are simple. We surrender or we die." Several representatives nodded. Fear had already made their decision for them. Admiral Tanaka stood. She was 63 years old with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen humanity's worst and best moments. She had commanded ships in the Mars Uprising and the Belt Wars. She had buried friends and enemies alike. She was tired of war, but she was more tired of tyrants. "May I share something with the Council?" she asked. The chamber fell silent. 60 years ago, we detected signals from deep space. Alien transmissions. We realized then that we were not alone. We also realized that the universe might not be friendly. She pressed a button, and holographic images filled the chamber. Ships, weapons, orbital platforms. For 60 years, we have prepared. Not for contact, for conflict. The representatives stared at the images. Massive warships with sleek, aggressive designs. Weapons systems that glowed with contained stellar energy. Defensive networks spanning the entire solar system. The Dominion has conquered herbivores, Tanaka continued. They have conquered pacifists and hive minds. Species that evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and abundant food. They have never encountered a species from a death world. Death world, someone asked. Earth, Tanaka said simply. A planet where 70% of the surface is covered in salt water that will kill you if you drink it. Where the weather systems can destroy cities. Where the dominant species spent its entire history fighting everything, including itself. We domesticated wolves because we thought it would be fun to have predators as friends. We split the atom because we were curious what would happen. We went to our moon not because we needed to, but because it was there. She looked around the chamber at faces that had known only fear moments ago. Now something else flickered in their eyes. The Dominion has given us 72 hours to kneel. I say we give them 72 hours to reconsider. The vote was unanimous. Across human space, the message spread. On Mars, factory workers doubled their shifts. In the asteroid belt, mining stations became weapons platforms. On Earth, young men and women lined up at recruitment centers in numbers not seen since the world wars of ancient history. High Arbiter Cross received reports of humanity's refusal with amusement. He sat upon his throne on the Dominion homeworld, surrounded by advisors who had witnessed the fall of countless civilizations. They refused? He asked, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Yes, High Arbiter, Grand Marshal Torvin confirmed. Their leader, a female called Tanaka, broadcast a response. She said, and I quote, "Come and take it." Cross made a sound that might have been laughter. Dispatch a correction fleet. 2,000 vessels should be sufficient for these primitives. Make an example of their outer colonies first. Let them watch their children burn before we reach their homeworld. Torvin bowed and left to give the orders. Only Overseer Drain remained. He had served Cross for 300 years and had learned to read the subtle currents of galactic politics. Something about this situation troubled him. High Arbiter, he said carefully, I have reviewed the intelligence on this species. They are unusual. Unusual how? They war constantly. Among themselves. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet many times over, and they have come close to using them. They are violent, unpredictable, and they do not surrender easily. Cross waved a dismissive hand. Every species believes itself special until they face our fleets. The humans will learn their place. They all do. Drain said nothing more. But as he left the throne room, he could not shake the feeling that the hegemony had just made a terrible mistake. Behind Jupiter, hidden from all sensors and all eyes, 4,000 human warships waited in perfect silence. Their hulls were painted black. Their weapons were charged. Their crews were ready. Admiral Tanaka stood at the center of her command ship and looked at the faces around her. Young faces, old faces, scared faces, determined faces. They think we are primitive, she said quietly. They think we will break. They have no idea what humanity is capable of when our backs are against the wall. She turned to the communications officer. Open a channel. All frequencies. Let the whole galaxy hear. The officer nodded. Tanaka took a breath and spoke words that would echo through history. To the Dominion hegemony, we received your terms. Here is our counteroffer. Come to our home, and we will teach you why nothing on Earth ever goes quietly into the night. The stars waited. The war was about to begin. Grand Marshal Torvin had destroyed 47 civilizations in his career. He remembered each one. The Valori had begged. The Kashin had prayed to gods that never answered. The Mindrath had tried to negotiate even as their cities burned. All of them had fallen. All of them had been forgotten. As he reviewed the data on humanity, he expected nothing different. 2,000 ships should be more than sufficient, he told his officers. Standard correction protocol. Destroy their outer colonies first. Let them see what awaits them. Then we move on their homeworld and finish the cleansing. His officers saluted and departed to prepare the fleet. Torvin studied the images of human warships captured by long-range sensors. They were smaller than Dominion vessels. Less elegant. They looked almost crude, with sharp angles and exposed weapon systems. Primitive designs from a primitive species. He did not know that those crude designs were built for one purpose: to kill as efficiently as possible. Behind Jupiter, Admiral Tanaka walked through the corridors of the UES Defiance, the flagship of humanity's 7th Armada. Captain David Webb fell into step beside her. The crews are ready, Webb reported. Morale is high. They know what we are fighting for. Tanaka nodded. And Dr. Wright? Is the Nova Lance system operational? Fully operational on all primary vessels. The Dominion has never seen anything like it. They entered the main hangar, where Dr. Samuel Wright stood before a massive weapon system that hummed with barely contained energy. Wright was a thin man with wild gray hair and eyes that sparkled with dangerous intelligence. He had spent 30 years developing weapons that humanity hoped it would never need. Now humanity needed them. Admiral, Wright said, gesturing to the glowing weapon. The Nova Lance. It fires concentrated stellar plasma at nearly the speed of light. Dominion shields are designed to stop conventional weapons. They have never encountered focused stellar matter. Their shields will fail. You are certain? Tanaka asked. Wright smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I tested a prototype on an asteroid the size of Manhattan. The asteroid no longer exists. Tanaka looked at the weapon and felt the weight of what they were about to do. Humanity had always been good at creating new ways to kill. It was perhaps their greatest talent and their greatest shame. There is something else, Wright said, his voice dropping lower. The Ragnarok Protocol. Webb stiffened. Even Tanaka felt a chill despite the warm air of the hangar. Explain it to the captain, Tanaka ordered. Wright pulled up a holographic display showing a network of small devices scattered across human space. If all else fails, he said slowly, these devices can destabilize stars. Not destroy them instantly, but make them flare. Make them expand. Any fleet near one of these stars would be incinerated. Webb stared at the display. That is insane. The radiation alone would kill billions. Yes, Wright agreed. It is our final deterrent. If the Dominion tries to exterminate us, we will make sure the cost is higher than they can pay. We will turn their own conquests into graveyards. Let us hope it never comes to that, Tanaka said quietly. Across human space, preparations continued at a desperate pace. On Mars, Commander Nadia Orlov drilled her tactical teams until they could execute complex maneuvers in their sleep. She was 40 years old with sharp features and sharper instincts. She had studied every battle in human history and many that had been fought between alien species. She knew that wars were won not by strength alone, but by cunning. The Dominion fights in formation, she told her officers. Rigid lines, predictable patterns. They have conquered so many species that they have grown arrogant. They expect their enemies to break and run. She pulled up tactical displays showing ancient naval battles from Earth's history. We will not run. We will use their arrogance against them. We will employ wolfpack tactics, small groups striking hard and vanishing. We will be everywhere and nowhere. We will make them fear the dark between the stars. Her officers listened with fierce attention. They were scared. They were also angry. And anger, Orlov knew, could be shaped into a weapon sharper than any blade on the Dominion homeworld. Overseer Drain continued his research on humanity in secret. What he found disturbed him deeply. This species had nearly destroyed itself multiple times. They had developed weapons capable of ending all life on their planet. They had wars that killed tens of millions. They had committed atrocities against their own kind that made Drain's stomach turn. But they had also done something remarkable. They had survived. They had pulled themselves back from the edge of extinction again and again. They had learned from their mistakes and grown stronger. And now, faced with the greatest threat in their history, they were not surrendering. They were not begging. They were building weapons and training soldiers and preparing to fight. Drain requested an audience with High Arbiter Cross. High Arbiter, he said carefully, I recommend we reconsider our approach to the human species. They are not like the others we have conquered. They are dangerous in ways we do not fully understand. Cross looked at him with all six eyes. You fear these primitives? I respect what they are capable of. Their history suggests that when threatened, they become more dangerous, not less. Cornered humans do not surrender. They attack. Cross was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. The correction fleet launches tomorrow. If these humans prove troublesome, we will send the primary fleet. 10,000 ships. A force that has not been assembled in 3,000 years. If that is not enough, we will burn their entire system and salt the void where their worlds once stood. Drain bowed and left. But as he walked away, he knew in his heart that the hegemony was about to face something it had never encountered before. In the cold darkness behind Jupiter, Admiral Tanaka watched as the last of her fleet powered up their engines. For 1,000 ships, the largest armada humanity had ever assembled, that IT would not be enough to win a prolonged war. But it might be enough to make the Dominion bleed. And sometimes, that was all you needed to start a revolution. All ships, she commanded. Prepare for combat. The enemy comes. The human armada began to move. The first Dominion ship to die did not understand what killed it. Its captain, a veteran of 30 conquest campaigns, watched his shields fail without warning. One moment they were at full power. The next moment, something punched through them like they were made of paper. The hull melted. The atmosphere vented. The captain had exactly 2 seconds to feel confusion before the cold vacuum claimed him. Across the Kuiper Belt, 400 more Dominion ships suffered the same fate in the first 60 seconds of battle. Grand Marshal Torvin stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His correction fleet had emerged from faster-than-light travel, expecting to find frightened primitives. Instead, they found a wall of human warships waiting in perfect formation. And those ships were firing weapons that should not exist. What is this? He demanded. What are they using? His weapons officer studied the sensor data with trembling hands. Unknown weapon type, Grand Marshal. It appears to be focused stellar plasma. Our shields are not designed to stop it. They are passing through like light through glass. Impossible, Torvin growled. Adjust shield frequencies. All ships, fall back to defensive formation. His orders went out across the fleet. But the humans did not give them time to regroup. That on the bridge of the Defiance, Captain David Webb watched the enemy formation begin to crumble. The Nova Lances were working exactly as Dr. Wright had promised. Dominion shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, were useless against concentrated stellar matter. Press the attack, he ordered. Do not give them room to breathe. Commander Nadia Orlov coordinated the assault from her position at the tactical station. Her eyes moved across multiple displays, tracking every ship, every weapon, every movement. She had drilled her crews for months on these exact maneuvers. All Wolfpack units, execute Pattern 7, she commanded. Strike their flanks and withdraw. Draw them apart. The human fleet moved with terrifying precision. Small groups of ships darted into the Dominion formation, fired devastating volleys, and disappeared into the darkness before the enemy could respond. It was not the rigid, predictable warfare that Torvin had faced for centuries. It was chaos, organized chaos, and the Dominion had no answer for it. Torvin watched another 100 ships vanish from his display. His officers shouted reports of casualties, of shield failures, of weapons that could not lock onto targets that moved too fast and too unpredictably. They are using ancient tactics, one officer reported, his voice thick with confusion. Naval warfare from their primitive ocean-going vessels. They call it crossing the T. They position their ships to fire full broadsides while we can only respond with forward weapons. Then adapt, Torvin roared. We have conquered 400 worlds. We will not be defeated by these animals. But adaptation required time, and the humans were not giving them any. Admiral Tanaka watched the battle from her command ship with cold satisfaction. The first phase had gone exactly as planned. The Dominion Correction Fleet was in disarray, bleeding ships by the hundreds. Their commanders were panicking, making mistakes, falling into traps that Orloff had carefully prepared. But Tanaka felt no joy. She knew this was only the beginning. Casualties? She asked quietly. 47 ships lost, her aide reported. Another 60 damaged, but still combat-capable. 47 ships. Thousands of human lives. Sons and daughters who would never go home. Tanaka closed her eyes for just a moment and let the weight of command settle on her shoulders. Then she opened them and returned to the ward on a damaged Dominion cruiser. Overseer Drain watched the battle through flickering displays. He had come to observe, to gather intelligence on humanity's capabilities. What he witnessed exceeded his worst fears. These humans did not fight like any species the Dominion had encountered. They did not form neat lines and exchange fire. They swarmed like predators, working in coordinated packs, isolating wounded ships and tearing them apart. Their tactics were savage but brilliant, and their weapons. Those terrible weapons that burned through shields like fire through dry grass. Drain began composing a message to High Arbiter Cross. The Arbiter needed to understand what they faced. This was not a correction campaign. This was war against an enemy that had evolved for combat over millions of years. Back on the Defiance, Captain Webb led his ship directly into the heart of the Dominion formation. It was a dangerous move. Suicidal, some would say. But Webb knew that sometimes you had to take risks to break an enemy's spirit. All forward Nova Lances, target their command ship, he ordered. The Defiance shuddered as it fired. Beams of stellar plasma crossed the void and struck Grand Marshal Torvin's flagship. The shields collapsed. The armor melted. Secondary explosions tore through the massive vessel. Torvin survived only because his bridge was heavily armored. But as he pulled himself from the wreckage of his command station, he knew the battle was lost. His fleet was scattered. His ships were burning. And those human predators were still hunting. All ships, he transmitted, his voice hollow with defeat. Tactical withdrawal. Fall back to the rally point. It was the first retreat order Grand Marshal Torvin had ever given in his 300-year career. Commander Orloff wanted to pursue. Every instinct screamed at her to chase the fleeing enemy and destroy them completely. But Admiral Tanaka gave different orders. Let them go, she said. Let them run back to their masters with stories of what happened here. Let the entire Dominion know that humanity is not prey. The human fleet held position as the remnants of the Dominion Correction Fleet limped away into the darkness. Of 2,000 ships, fewer than 800 remained on the Defiance. The crew erupted in cheers. They had done it. They had faced the conquerors of 400 worlds and sent them running. But Captain Webb did not celebrate. He looked at the debris field where human and Dominion ships drifted together in death. He thought about the messages he would have to write to the families of the fallen. This is only the first battle, he said quietly to no one in particular. They will come back. And next time, they will bring everything they have. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. The Dominion had been defeated. The undefeated had been defeated. And on 100 conquered worlds, slaves who had known nothing but despair for generations began to whisper a new word: hope. In a mine shaft 3 kilometers beneath the surface of a conquered world, a young slave pressed her ear against a hidden radio receiver. Her species had been subjugated for 800 years. Her grandmother's grandmother had been born in chains. She had never known freedom. She had never imagined it was possible. But tonight, the static cleared, and she heard something that changed everything. A human voice, translated into 1,000 languages, spoke across the galaxy. The Dominion Correction Fleet has been defeated. We are humanity. We do not kneel. The young slave began to cry, not from sadness, from something she had no word for. Something her people had forgotten existed. Across the Dominion's vast empire, the same scene repeated itself. In factory camps and breeding facilities and labor colonies, conquered species huddled around forbidden receivers and learned that the unbeatable had been beaten. The hegemony's information blackout had failed on the Dominion homeworld. High Arbiter Cross received Grand Marshal Torvin's report in person. The Grand Marshal knelt before the throne, his uniform torn and stained with the blood of his crew. For 300 years, he had been the hegemony's greatest warrior. Now he knelt in shame. "Explain," Cross commanded. His 6 eyes burned with cold fury. "Their weapons," Torvin said. "They fire concentrated stellar matter. Our shields cannot stop it. And their tactics are unlike anything we have encountered. They do not fight in formations. They swarm. They strike from all directions. They are relentless. You outnumbered them. Numbers mean nothing against an enemy who fights like this. They are predators, High Arbiter. Their entire evolution shaped them for combat. We have conquered herbivores and hive minds and peaceful species. We have never faced anything like humans." Cross was silent for a long moment. Around him, his advisors shifted nervously. No one had ever seen the Arbiter receive news of defeat. It was unprecedented. Finally, Cross spoke. "Mobilize the primary fleet. 10,000 ships. Every warship we have. We will crush these humans and erase any memory that they ever existed." Torvin raised his head. "High Arbiter, I recommend caution. These humans are dangerous. Perhaps negotiation would be more." "Negotiation?" Cross's voice could have frozen stars. "The Dominion does not negotiate with prey. The primary fleet launches in 3 cycles. You will command it, Torvin. Redeem yourself or die trying." As Torvin left the throne room, Overseer Drain approached Cross with a data tablet. "High Arbiter, there is something else you should see. Reports from the conquered worlds. There are uprisings, slave revolts. Minor incidents for now, but spreading." Cross took the tablet and studied the reports. On 12 worlds, conquered species had attacked their overseers. Small rebellions easily crushed, but the timing was troubling. They heard about the human victory. Drain continued. "The slaves are chanting a word. A human word. Defiance." Cross crushed the tablet in his hand. In the Sol system, Admiral Tanaka faced a different challenge. Humanity had won a battle, but winning a war against the Dominion's full might was impossible through strength alone. They needed allies. Human diplomatic ships, disguised as trading vessels, slipped into neutral space. There, they made contact with the remnant worlds, species the Dominion had conquered but never completely broken. Species with hidden fleets and burning hatred for their oppressors. Captain Webb piloted the Defiance to a secret meeting point in the dead space between stars. There, 3 alien vessels waited. Each belonged to a different conquered species. Each captain had risked execution to be there. "Why should we trust you?" asked the leader of the Tessari delegation, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms. "Your species is young. The Dominion has ruled for 10,000 years. What makes you think you can change anything?" Webb chose his words carefully. "Because we have something you do not. We have hope, and we have weapons that can hurt them." "The Nova Lances," said the Kashan representative, a creature that resembled a walking mantis. "We have heard of them. Stellar plasma weapons. Impressive. But weapons alone cannot defeat the hegemony." "You are right," Webb agreed. "We also need numbers. We need allies. We need the remnant worlds to rise together. 1 rebellion can be crushed. 100 rebellions cannot." The representatives exchanged glances. For 800 years, the Tessari had dreamed of freedom. For 600 years, the Kashans had prayed for deliverance. And now these strange, violent, impossibly brave humans were offering them a chance. "What do you want from us?" the Tessari leader asked. "Fight with us. When the Dominion sends their primary fleet, they will leave their core worlds vulnerable. Strike then. Free your people. And when the dust settles, we will build something new together. A galaxy where species are partners, not masters and slaves. The alien representatives were silent. It was a beautiful dream. It was also almost certainly suicide. But then the Kashan spoke. My people have a saying. It is better to die free than to live forever in chains. We will fight. The Tessari leader nodded slowly. As will we. One by one, the representatives pledged their support. Word would spread through hidden channels. When the moment came, the remnant worlds would rise. Webb returned to the Sol system with news that changed everything. They were no longer alone. But Admiral Tanaka knew the hardest part was still ahead. Dr. Wright had briefed her on the full scope of the Ragnarok protocol. The devices were in place. If the Dominion could not be stopped conventionally, humanity could trigger stellar flares that would devastate enemy fleets. The cost would be millions of lives, including the slaves on those worlds. Can we do this? She asked Wright quietly. Can we kill millions of innocents to save ourselves? Wright had no answer. Some questions had no good answers. On the Defiance, Captain Webb stood alone in his quarters and looked at a photograph of Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Home. We will protect you, he whispered. Whatever it costs. Across the galaxy, the primary fleet began to assemble. 10,000 warships. The largest force the Dominion had deployed in 3,000 years. And on 100 conquered worlds, slaves who had never known hope began to sharpen hidden weapons and dream of freedom. The galaxy held its breath. The storm was coming. Blood floated in zero gravity, forming perfect red spheres that drifted through the ruined bridge of the Dominion supply carrier. The ship had been carrying fuel and ammunition for the primary fleet. Now it carried nothing but corpses. Captain Webb guided the Defiance away from the wreckage and surveyed the debris field. His wolf pack had destroyed 12 supply ships in the last hour. The Dominion primary fleet would arrive at Earth with empty fuel tanks and half-loaded weapons. Good hunting, Commander Orloff said through the communications channel. Her voice was tired but satisfied. That should slow them down. Webb nodded grimly. They had pushed deep into Dominion space, striking supply lines and communication relays. It was dangerous work. They were far from reinforcement, surrounded by enemies. But it was working. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that fought like this. They expected their opponents to defend their homes and wait for the inevitable. They did not expect humans to attack. On the Dominion homeworld, High Arbiter Cross received reports of the human raids with growing frustration. His primary fleet was delayed. Supply lines were disrupted. And worst of all, the remnant worlds were in open revolt. The Tessari have destroyed 3 garrison fleets, his aide reported nervously. The Kashans have liberated 2 colony worlds. And there are reports of uprisings in 16 other systems. Cross slammed his fist against his throne. The stone cracked beneath his blow. How did this happen? How did these primitives coordinate a galaxy-wide rebellion? Overseer Drain stepped forward. The humans, High Arbiter, they have been communicating with the remnant worlds, sharing tactics, providing intelligence. They have turned our own subjects against us. Then we will crush them all, Cross snarled. Once the humans are destroyed, we will exterminate every species that dare to rise. The galaxy will learn the cost of defiance. But even as he spoke, Cross felt something he had not experienced in 3,000 years. Doubt. Deep in the Thornwood Nebula, the human armada gathered for the largest battle of the war. Admiral Tanaka stood at the center of her command ship and studied the tactical display. Her fleet had grown. Tessari cruisers and Kashan fighters flew alongside human warships. The remnant worlds had sent every ship they could spare. It still was not enough. The Dominion primary fleet outnumbered them 3-1. We cannot win a straight fight, Commander Orloff said, stating the obvious truth. We need to be smarter. The wolf pack doctrine, Tanaka agreed. Strike and fade. Draw them into the nebula where their numbers mean less. Make them bleed for every kilometer. The battle began at dawn, though dawn meant nothing in the endless night of space. The Dominion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 10,000 ships, arranged in the rigid lines that had conquered 400 worlds, and waiting for them was chaos. Human ships darted through the nebula's dust clouds, appearing from nowhere to strike at Dominion vessels before vanishing again. Tessari cruisers used their superior speed to flank enemy formations. Kashin fighters swarmed larger ships, overwhelming their point defenses through sheer numbers. Grand Marshal Torvin tried to adapt, but his fleet was designed for a different kind of war. Every time he concentrated his forces to destroy one threat, two more appeared somewhere else. His commanders were confused, frightened, making mistakes. "They are everywhere," one captain reported, his voice rising in panic. "We cannot target them. They move too fast. They are ghosts." "Hold formation," Torvin commanded, but his words rang hollow. The formation was already breaking on the Defiance. Captain Webb led his wolf pack through the heart of the enemy fleet. Nova lances blazed, cutting through Dominion shields like they were not there. Around him, his crew worked with desperate efficiency. They knew they were outgunned. They did not care. "Target their fuel carriers," Webb ordered. "If they cannot refuel, they cannot pursue us to Earth." The Defiance and her escorts tore through the Dominion logistics train, leaving burning wreckage in their wake. Webb pushed his ship harder than it was designed to go, knowing that every second mattered. Then the alarms screamed a Dominion dreadnought had broken from the main fleet and was bearing down on the Defiance. It was 3 times their size, with weapons that could tear them apart in seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Webb shouted. But it was too late. The first volley struck the Defiance's shields. They held, barely. The second volley punched through, tearing a hole in the port side. Air screamed into space. Crew members died. On the bridge, Commander Orloff was thrown from her station. Her head struck a console, and blood poured from a gash above her eye. She tried to stand and collapsed. "Commander down," someone shouted. Webb made a decision in an instant. He could run and save what remained of his crew. Or he could finish the mission. He chose the mission. "All forward weapons, fire on that dreadnought. Everything we have." The Defiance shuddered as every weapon fired at once. Nova lances, plasma cannons, missile batteries. Everything poured into the enemy ship. The dreadnought's shields collapsed. Its hull cracked. Its reactors went critical. The explosion was blinding. When Webb's vision cleared, the dreadnought was gone. So were 3 more Dominion ships that had been caught in the blast. "Damage report," he said quietly. "Heavy casualties," his aide reported. "Port section is gone. Engineering is failing. Commander Orloff is stable but unconscious." Webb closed his eyes for a moment. So many dead. So many more still to die. But the mission was complete. The Dominion's supply lines were destroyed. Across the nebula, the battle raged on. Hour after hour, the Human Alliance ground down the Dominion forces. They lost ships. They lost friends. But they did not stop, and slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Grand Marshal Torvin watched his fleet crumble and knew the truth. They were not facing primitives. They were facing predators who had spent millions of years evolving to hunt and kill. And predators did not stop until their prey was dead. On her command ship, Admiral Tanaka received the reports of victory with no celebration. Too many had died. Too much had been lost. But the path to the Dominion homeworld was now clear. "All ships," she ordered, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that weighed on her soul. "Prepare for the final assault. We end this now." The human armada began to move. The fire was rising, and it would not stop until the whole galaxy was free. The Dominion homeworld had a name that could not be spoken by human tongues. For 10,000 years, it had been the center of an empire that spanned the galaxy. Billions lived in its sprawling cities. Trillions more looked to it as the seat of absolute power. Now, for the first time in history, enemy ships filled its sky. High Arbiter Cross stood in his throne room and watched the human armada emerge from faster-than-light travel. Thousands of vessels, more than any enemy had ever brought against the hegemony. Human warships flew alongside Tessari cruisers and Kashin fighters and dozens of other species that had been slaves just weeks ago. Around him, his advisors panicked. Guards rushed to defensive positions. Alarms echoed through the ancient halls, but Cross felt nothing. Only emptiness that he had ruled for 3,000 years. He had crushed 400 civilizations. He had believed himself eternal, unstoppable, beyond challenge. Now he watched everything he had built begin to burn to in orbit. The final battle began. Dominion defense platforms opened fire on the Allied fleet. Human ships responded with Nova lances that cut through shields and armor like knives through flesh. The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire and explosions. Captain Webb piloted the damaged Defiance into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship was wounded. His crew was exhausted. But they had not come this far to stop now. Beside him, Commander Orloff had returned to duty against medical orders. Her head was bandaged, and her vision blurred occasionally, but her mind was sharp as ever. Target the command platform, she ordered. That is their coordination center. Destroy it, and their defense network falls apart. Webb nodded and pushed the engines to maximum. The Defiance screamed through the chaos of battle, dodging fire, weaving between larger ships. Behind them, their wolf pack followed on her command ship. Admiral Tanaka watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Dominion defenses were strong, but they were crumbling. Decades of preparation and months of desperate fighting had led to this moment. Then her communications officer spoke. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from Dr. Wright. He says the Ragnarok device is in position near the Dominion star. Tanaka felt her stomach clench. The final option. The weapon that could end everything if the Dominion refused to surrender. Tell him to stand by, she ordered. We use it only as a last resort. On the planet below, Grand Marshal Torvin stood before High Arbiter Cross. His uniform was torn. His face was bloody. His fleet was destroyed. High Arbiter, he said, his voice hollow. The defense platforms are falling. The humans will breach our orbital perimeter within the hour. We must consider surrender. Cross's 6 eyes blazed with fury. Surrender? The Dominion has never surrendered. We will fight to the last soldier. We will destroy this planet before we let it fall to these animals. And kill our own people. Torvin asked quietly. Billions of civilians? Our families. The question hung in the air. Around them, the throne room shook as explosions reached the surface. Overseer Drain stepped forward. He had served Cross for 300 years. He had watched the Arbiter conquer and destroy without mercy. But he had also seen the cost of that cruelty. The rebellion. The suffering. The endless cycle of violence. High Arbiter, he said carefully. The humans have offered terms. They do not wish to destroy us. They wish to end the hegemony's expansion and free the conquered species. If we surrender, our people will live. Cross turned to him with hatred in his eyes. You would have me kneel to these primitives? I would have you save our civilization from extinction. For a long moment, no one spoke. The sounds of battle echoed from above. Then, without warning, Dr. Wright activated the Ragnarok device. He did not destroy the star. He did not need to. He simply demonstrated what humanity was capable of. The Dominion sun flared. Not enough to harm anyone on the planet, but enough to be visible from orbit. For one terrifying moment, every being in the system believed their star was about to explode. The message was clear. Humanity could end everything. They chose not to. But that choice could change at any moment. Grand Marshal Torvin acted without hesitation. He drew his sidearm and pointed it at Cross. Around them, guards who had served Cross for centuries lowered their weapons and stepped back. The war is over, Torvin said. Your pride has cost us too much already. Overseer Drain will negotiate the surrender. Cross stared at his most loyal general in disbelief. You would betray me? I am saving our people from your madness. Drain moved quickly. Within minutes, he had established contact with Admiral Tanaka. The terms were simple. Unconditional surrender, immediate release of all enslaved species, dissolution of the hegemony's military authority. Admiral Tanaka accepted that in orbit. The guns fell silent. Human ships held their positions as Dominion vessels powered down their weapons. For the first time in 10,000 years, the hegemony had been defeated on the Defiance. Captain Webb slumped in his chair and allowed himself to breathe. Around him, his crew wept with exhaustion and relief. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had done it. Commander Orloff placed a hand on his shoulder. We won, she said quietly. We survived, Webb corrected her. The winning comes next. Building something better than what came before. 3 days later, Admiral Tanaka broadcast a message across the galaxy. Her voice reached every world, every station, every ship. Trillions of beings heard her words. To the people of the galaxy, the Dominion hegemony has surrendered. Their empire of slavery and conquest is finished. But this is not a human victory. It is a victory for every species that dreamed of freedom. We did not come to conquer. We came to remind the universe that freedom is not given. It is taken and defended by those willing to sacrifice everything for it. The stars no longer belong to tyrants. They belong to all of us. Across 100 worlds, former slaves emerged from hiding and looked up at the sky for the first time as free beings. Children who had been born in chains would grow up knowing liberty. Civilizations that had been silenced for millennia began to speak again. On Earth, celebrations erupted. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged victorious. They had proven that courage and determination could overcome even the darkest odds. Captain Webb returned home as a hero. But he felt no glory, only relief that his crew had survived and hope that the peace they had won would last. In the years that followed, statues rose on 100 worlds. They depicted human soldiers standing alongside Tessari and Kashans and dozens of other species. At the base of each statue, a single word was carved in every language: defiance. And in the history books of 1,000 civilizations, a new chapter was written. It told the story of a young species from a harsh world who received an ultimatum from an ancient empire. They had been ordered to kneel. Instead, they had lit the stars on fire, and the galaxy had never been the same at the end.